Last week, President Obama told a group of students in Mexico that technology is empowering. And he said not only individually empowering, but it builds relationships between people, institutions, and nations. This afternoon, we've asked some extraordinary leaders in education to help look at how educational and scholarly exchange happen not only across physical borders, but immaterial ones as well. Technology has the possibility now of broadening those relationships and connecting us more widely than we were ever able to contemplate at another time in the history of this program. In the age of instant and ubiquitous engagement, virtual exchange will be a fact of life. So how do we use that to our advantage? How do we get past platitudes and into the real benefits and discuss the real risks?
We're particularly excited because of the shared values between the university and the Fulbright program, our commitment to developing mutual understanding through intellectual exchange. And we do this with the expectation that the exchange there will not only influence the scholarship that's going on at that particular time, but will help develop a worldview that will inform scholarship long into the future.
I want to welcome you here because there's a long history between the Fulbright Scholar Program and the City of Chicago. As Tom told me about, there's 400, at any given time, 400 Fulbright Scholars in and around the City of Chicago, because as you're dealing with distant learning and technology and education and how to adapt technology to education, it's a subject dear to our hearts, to making sure a child, regardless of where they live, regardless of the zip code, regardless of their economic conditions, make sure that every child in the City of Chicago has a great education, because that's the only way to make sure every door is open rather than every door is shut.
So to begin, this past year really has been one full of conversation, blogging and tweets about MOOCs, e-learning, and OERs. These days, e-learning is not just well embedded. In fact, I don't think that we could even imagine being in a college or university environment anymore without some of this content online. And the question for presidents and for provosts is not whether we should have e-learning, but how can we afford the amount that we really want to have. The current conversation regarding MOOCs, I think, probably really began in 2011 by Stanford University professors as computer science online offerings, and really reached warp speed when the presidents of Harvard and MIT announced that they would enter the market with a $60 million venture entitled edX.
I wanted to start out today just by noting, I think, a couple of common sentiments which we probably can all see. And that is the incredible power of technology, not only for education generally, but specifically for global education, which is, after all, about bringing people together. But there are some serious challenges with these incredible opportunities. And a couple of them that we've been dealing with at the Department of Education are around ensuring that there is and continues to be access, quality, for access and quality for the students who can participate, and making sure that there's the chance to complete the courses that they take. Not only that there are more materials, that there are more conversations, but to make sure that we have real exchanges of ideas and the development of critical thinking. And that's what I'm excited about to be part of in this conversation today, which I think will be the first of many conversations for Fulbright and the international education community in figuring out how we can expand the quality as well as just the connectivity of our students and researchers.
And one of the advantages of now having these materials available, and including for Fulbright scholars, of course, is that new libraries and institutions such as, say, the relatively new universities in Education City and Qatar can access a vast array of material without having to physically recreate libraries, which would be very difficult to do. And Fulbrighters can have access as individuals or when they study in these universities, as can just about everybody else. So a revolution has really taken place in access to educational materials. More speed, less cost, accessibility, all huge pluses for individuals and institutions. New technologies allow for generation skipping. That's what new technologies do. They allow countries and peoples who have not been at the state of the art to catch up. But I see growing global collaborations made possible through online technologies that will really allow folks to access each other's both courses, best practices, educational material. And I think this is a really important set of innovations for the future.
So what made this Fulbright MTBU program unique, and it's still going strong today, is a blog component. All grantees are required to blog about their experiences, write posts, and share multimedia to kind of illustrate their projects and the communities that they're working in. And what I learned in blogging while in Mexico is that the blog format really represents both the potentials and the problems of trying to bring an experience like the Fulbright onto the web and into digital space. But as one potential path forward, I want to argue that we also not overlook some of the educational power tools that we already have at our disposal, and that's social media. Just this weekend, the question of this panel, how does new technology impact global learning, was posted on the Fulbright page, and it elicited this great conversation and many hundreds of likes, and so it got some traction there on the page. And I'm not sure that kind of dynamic conversation just happening over the weekend may have happened in a more specialized space like a MOOC. So I think there's something to be said for reaching learners where they're already spending time online.
University of the People is the first online tuition-free nonprofit university designed to open the gates of higher education for everyone, for the millions around the world who graduate high school and cannot afford going to college. And as you know, a lot of them cannot do it for financial reasons. Education is expensive in most parts of the world, but in many other places, there just aren't enough seats. Students graduate high school, they take a placement exam, either they're in or they're out. If they're out, it doesn't mean that they're not qualified, it means that there is no room for them. To cut down the cost of higher education is available and for free. Open source technology that everyone can use for free, open educational resources, content, just described, that professors produce, put on the internet for the rest of the world to use, and the new internet culture of teaching and learning from each other for free. And they said, wait a second, all I need to do is to put it all together.
I'll just start with a question from the Philippines, and this is a fairly broad question. What is the greatest challenge currently you see for technology for global education, the greatest challenge, and what would a potential solution be? So, question and answer. Right?
Well, I think that the challenge is to realize that the technology is there and we should use it rather than keep looking for better and better and better technology before we implement it. To go everywhere, because we can go everywhere, because just think about how many mobile devices are there in developing countries. We can do it. We shouldn't wait.
Yeah, to echo that point, I think the biggest challenge now is different levels of access. There's a tendency to kind of speak in blanket terms, I think, with technology as if it were equally accessible to everyone in the world, but developing educational resources that can be accessed by different levels of connectivity, different kinds of devices, ideally in different languages, and the technology has improved there tremendously. It's wonderful the kinds of translations you can make, but there's still a lot of room for improvement there too.
That's a great comment. It actually feeds nicely into the question that came to us from Rwanda, where we're being asked that the challenge there is using MOOCs for participation in higher education in a country where internet access is only 7%. And so there's a proposition, why not MORCs, massive open radio courses?
I referred briefly to the specificity of both labor markets and educational needs. As these evolve, they're going to have to evolve in terms of the needs of the society, which don't look the same in large-scale societies, smaller ones, ones that have developed institutions, ones that don't. So to me, that's one of the big challenges, is how do you begin to really deal with the specificity of place. You can do a lot of things at relatively low cost if you can get people to volunteer, or you can subsidize the ones who can't pay. But I don't think we're going to see a free good out here for access to everybody. I'm all for free goods if we can do it. I think it's just very, very tough to make it work at scale. He talked about, if I remember correctly, 1,500 students. We're talking about tens of millions of people who don't have access.
Well, I think that I agree with you. We are not, as I said, we are tuition free, we are not free. And the cost is very minimal, but there is a cost. When we grow much larger, this $100 per exam, $1,000 per year per student makes us sustainable only by it. We are sustainable now because we get grants. In 2 years, we are going to be sustainable from only this $100 per exam. Now, we can do it, yes, because of volunteers. But even if we pay them, as I said, we can be sustainable because we concentrate on only the essential things.
And I think this is also a place where Fulbright and others can actually have a real leadership role. When we look at OERs and open source materials, a lot of them are quite strong in the science, in a lot of the sciences. But when you look at the cross-cultural diplomacy skills, if you look at the language areas, they're relatively weaker. And so that's why the project that Fulbright has had to use OERs is important. But I would really encourage you all to keep that going. To the extent that we have all of these Fulbrighters who've come back, building up our partnerships with our own schools. And I know this has already been done in different ways over the years, but I think there's room still to do that. And so it's not just what you do with the technology while you're doing it, but how you can build up the collective knowledge and the collective etiquette that you so well put to spread throughout the country.
The question I'd like to ask has to do with the way MOOCs would sort of break down the elitism of universities. I've taught at various schools and universities, and I taught one online class. I'm actually an artist. So I taught a class in sculpture where I had people from all around the world taking this class. And what I think of when I think of MOOCs is like this, like everyone's let in kind of idea. But I'm going to just ask you, would you want everyone in a class, say in sculpture or violin, or in, say, an excellent course in business?
MOOC is free in most cases, but it is not open. It's not open educational resources, and there is a big difference between the two. Open educational resources is the movement where people can take the material, reuse it, reshape it, and for free. So it's great, the MOOC, because it spread the knowledge. But it doesn't open access to those who didn't have it, because they need more than a course out there. They need a special treatment. They need personalized attention. So we should all remember that the MOOC is great, but there are limitations there, and it is not going to solve, at least not the access problem.
Clearly, we're just at the very beginning of what I think will be a very long and robust conversation. What can you suggest that we can capture from the various subjects that we've discussed that could be actually utilized in terms of our Fulbright mission?
So I think it's really important to get the Fulbright message out, the message at an individual level, what people have done, and then at a social or national level, the importance of study abroad and international exchange. So we've talked a lot about OERs and open access. My practical recommendations would be to create a Fulbright repository on the Learning Registry, to use something called Open Badges, which is run by the Mozilla Foundation, was launched in the last couple of years, and it recognizes competency-based skills in learning.
I think you have a unique set of experiences that you get from Fulbright scholars, and I would like to see, and here I think online technologies really can help, but really getting it out there so that there is some kind of archive, which is now, I don't know how much you do of it now, but made available to would-be Fulbright scholars, to people who have nothing to do with Fulbright, I think could all benefit a lot from those experiences once they are kind of cataloged and put out there.
These technologies have tremendous potential, but also limitations. And I think the better that we can understand those and work with those, the more we're going to be able to use them. I think we can no more talk about technology as sort of a panacea for learning problems than we can talk about global learners as needing the same things from these technologies. So I think we need to also recognize the nuances in different countries' needs, different countries' levels of access, and go about tailoring the tools in that way as well. And finally, I think what all of this talk about mediated communication does, too, is it helps us to reinforce and recognize the importance of face-to-face interaction. I'm one of those who feels very optimistic about this new world that we're going into, because I feel like it opens up new opportunities for connection and for communication. But the project is going to be learning how to synthesize the two, and we're just at the beginning.
I think the technology gives a great opportunity to Fulbright to spread the word. Multiply the effect of Fulbright by many times by using social media and bringing the knowledge using OER and through the social media to reach people all over the world to enjoy the richness that right now is constrained within the scholars themselves, and the social media can do it.